let's talk pre-snap. I mentioned some of those muscles that you need, that posterior chain, that's so important when it comes to long snapping. One of these guys right here, this is Forrest Hill. He was in the same class I was. He was a snapper at Auburn. Incredibly technical long snapper. Really, really good, okay? His pre-snap setup, as you can see here, is a lot of things that we want. I'm not going to talk all about the long arms, the flat back. But what I do want to point out and I want to talk about is his legs right here. You can see the flexion in his legs, okay? Nice Z in the knee there. He's got his knees a little bit over the middle of his foot, not too far over his toes. But you can see the tension that's in his legs. When I'm coaching a kid, I try and talk about if you took a rubber band, you put it around your finger, and you were to pull that rubber band as tight as you could, and you were going to fling it across the classroom at your buddy, right? And you pull that rubber band as tight as you can. Well, that's what you want in the long snap, okay? You need all of those muscles ready and activated. You don't want to be at a point of where you're of unrest or you're too unsettled before you snap, but you do need to have a point where you can kind of almost, you're just to the point where you can almost feel your legs shaking a little bit underneath you. That means that every single one of those muscles in that posterior chain is activated. All right, you don't want to be too loose when it comes to that, especially if you want to talk about a violent and fast motion that you're going to have to get through in the snap. All right, because when we're talking about snap velocity, you're talking about the top end of snappers at a 0.65, okay, 0.65 seconds. From the time that ball moves to the time it hits the punter's hands, talking about 0.65 seconds. And a slower Division I, if we're talking maybe a Division I long snapper, a slower Division I long snapper is going to be anywhere from a 0.78 to a 0.80. So you're talking about 1/10 of a second maybe, okay? So this is a very fast motion where we have to be incredibly efficient with the movement in a very small space, okay? So we need as much muscle contraction as we can get at the start of this snap to then release as much energy as we can back towards our target. Let's talk about that release of energy. Full extension, okay, when we get through the snap. And I'm talking about this leg lock here that you see in this bottom of the screen. You saw it on the, I'm going to go back just one slide real quick. You see it here with, this is Nick Sunderberg, spent 11 years in the league, one of the fastest snappers I've ever seen. Okay, you're going to see video of him here in a second. Incredibly efficient at getting his legs locked out before he released the football. And that's key, guys, okay? That's key. You're going to see in the video that these NFL long snappers have the ball still in their hands and full extension in their legs, right? That means that all of this power that Forrest has in his legs here is being released back towards his target before the ball is gone, okay? I'll see a lot of kids who will still have a little bit of bend in this knee right here, okay? And the ball's gone. Well, then after the ball's gone in their follow-through, they get to this position. Can't have that, right? Because anything that you left in your legs, anything that's still bent in there is energy that we haven't fully released to our target. So we need to make sure that we get that full leg lock and that extension while the ball is still underneath us. We're going to see more of that in the film here in a little bit. I also want to talk a little bit about the follow-through. All right. I mentioned it already. Violence. This is a violent movement that you have to create with your hands. Okay. Those wrists and those hands need to snap. I see too many kids in high school who just kind of want to lay their hands off the ball. Okay. That creates poor follow through where we don't get our palms out and our thumbs up, which is reversed for me right now because I'm looking straight up. But those palms out, those thumbs up, I don't see enough kids who want to get all the way there and be violent with those hands. Okay, so I see a lot of guys who just want to lay the ball off and lay their hands flat. The more we can rotate those wrists and rotate those hands, the more RPMs we're going to get on the ball, the tighter the spiral becomes, and then ultimately, the faster that snap gets, okay? Go back to the strength and conditioning real quick. One thing I didn't talk about, triceps, huge with this, all right? Not only with the grip strength, but then also the triceps and being able to extend that muscle there through our follow through and really activate those hands and those wrists. That's crucial to the snapping velocity that you want to create. Okay, there's so much that kids, high school snappers that I see, they give up on that long snap as soon as the ball's gone. They think there's nothing more they can do. Well, that's not true at all. Okay, a lot of what you do post snap, or a lot of what you do after the ball is released, plays a huge role in accuracy and speed of that football. So a guy who wants to just kind of lay his hands off the football, right? I've got one here. A guy who just kind of wants to lay his hands off the ball like this and not completely finish the snap is costing himself that 1/10 of a second. That's a difference between a 0.70 D1 Power 5 guy and an 8.0 low-level preferred walk-on G5 guy, okay? So making sure that we're really rotating those hands and being violent, more spins, more RPMs, means that you'll get more velocity on your snap. Okay, so do's and don'ts for snapping velocity. If we just get down to the simplest form, guys, you have to encourage your long snappers to get out there and get the reps in. Okay, I coach at a school. We've got 300 kids. We're fortunate to have 60 kids in our entire program. My long snapper is either my center or my tight end, and it's like pulling teeth to get him to be the first guy out on the field every single day, pre-practice, to get the reps in that he needs to be successful. And if you're in a program like that, you have got to stay on your guys to be getting the work in. If you just have a kid who's going to go out and long snap during practice, his 4, 5, 6 reps, if you're lucky, when you guys are doing punt in practice in your segment, you're not going to see the improvements that he needs to make to get from an 8.0 or an 8.5 guy or even a 9.0 guy that you're trying to get down to a 0.80. All right. He has got to get the reps in. Okay. If he's a kid that is really, really serious about long snapping, a kid maybe that we've trained before at Kohl's, or maybe he goes to another snapping coach around the country, great. Then those guys are few and far between, though. I mean, there's thousands of high schools out here. I don't know how many coaches we've got on the call right now, but if you're a guy, I'd be curious to know if you've got a guy like that, or if you've got a guy that, you know, you're a small program and you just don't have a true dedicated long snapper. How many reps, be honest with yourself, how many reps is he getting in over the summer and then during the week? And if he's not getting those reps in, he's never going to be able to complete this, to make this jump in snapping velocity. You could probably turn him into a really accurate long snapper, and that's great. And you're going to see here at the bottom of my screen, I'm going to talk a little bit about the accuracy in a second. That's fantastic if you can turn him into a super accurate long snapper. But for him to make the jump from a velocity standpoint, you have got to get those reps that they talk about for that 10,000 hour rule, or else it's just not going to happen. Okay. The other thing, snap the ball first. This goes back to that follow through. Okay. Whether you've got a guy in your scheme who's got a max protect, or you're wanting him to get out in coverage, maybe he's a super athletic kid, loves going down and making tackles. That is great. Okay. But he cannot sacrifice the actual motion of the long snap, which includes that follow through. He cannot sacrifice that if he wants to improve his snap speed. Okay. It's amazing what giving up on just a half a second of that follow through will do for that little arc at the end of your long snap. Okay. When he starts to see the ball kind of trail off, you wonder, man, during practice, he's great. Okay. Really tight. It's on a frozen rope, but then we get into the games and you see that little loop at the very end of the film, right? Where it just kind of falls into your punter's hands instead of continuing to rise when it hits your punter. That's because he's not finishing the snap entirely during the game. So you need to review that with him in film. You need to talk to him about making sure that he continues to finish the long snap, all right, before he gets out either into coverage or into a blocking technique, okay? And then the last one, choose violence. Guys, it's a fast, violent motion. Now, there's a little bit of controlled violence that you have to factor in here. Okay, we don't want arms and ass and elbows just flailing everywhere, right? But we need some controlled violence in this very short space. It's about 18 inches or so, if you really measure it, okay, that most of this action is happening. But in those 18 inches, We have to be as fast as we possibly can with the movement.